when of nearly 50 sports that are played, just a handful of them are divided. It's all of them, the sports that split at various stages in the 20s and 30s. And it's a pity that soccer was one of the very first casualties, 1922, one of the very first to break into two. Rugby, hockey, the team that are out at in Lahore at the moment, nearly every other sport, it's a 32-county team.
And what's the origin of this split then?
I think there was a lot of rivalry between Dublin and Belfast. Ireland the soccer scene in Ireland would be comparable to Scotland in that Edinburgh would be the rugby headquarters, Dublin would be the rugby headquarters of Ireland, and Glasgow, the big industrial city, was the ideal place for soccer in Scotland. Belfast was Ireland's equivalent of Glasgow. So really, soccer came to Belfast, soccer grew up in Belfast, soccer got the big crowds in Belfast. At the time, 1922, our Dublin clubs had been pushed out of the Irish League as it was then. It was very much a temporary arrangement. It was due to the Great Troubles, 1919 to 22, and Belfast Celtic were also pushed out, which was basically the Catholic club in Belfast. The Dublin clubs pulled out and decided to set up a league of their own. Belfast Celtic, who they expected to come with them, stayed put. Even though they were making no money, they stayed out of football for 3 more years, went back in. So all of that, there were lots of other things going on, but a few personalities, very often something very historic, a very damaging split in sport as in anything else, is down to 2 or 3 personalities who wouldn't sit around the table.
As always, people who get obdurate and obstinate and so on. How far back does soccer go in Ireland, by the way?
Soccer was discovered by a Belfast man who was over on his honeymoon in Scotland, and came back and brought the 2 Glasgow clubs over to play, and a couple of rugby clubs in Belfast began to take up soccer more or less to keep them in trim. And it came to Dublin about 1883. So from then on, it's very interesting. The very early Irish teams, they were really worried about Scottish and English players playing for Ireland. So you had to live in Ireland for 7 years before you were entitled to play for Ireland. It's quite the opposite of what's been happening in recent years.
So roughly then it goes back 1850-ish, would it?
1880. And I think, it's all to do with the pneumatic ball. I mean, up till then you couldn't actually get a manufactured ball that you could kick without breaking 3 of your toes. So you notice all the sports, 1860s, 1870s, 1880s, all came up around the same time. 3 ball games invented within a short space of 20 years.
Mind you, that split between North and South, it does give us a double go at
That's right. I mean, writing something that goes into the history of Irish soccer, which about a third of the book does. It's great to be able to latch on to Northern Ireland and Sweden in 1958 and Spain in 82 and be able to identify with it, because I think when one of the Irish soccer teams goes to a World Cup final, the 32 counties get very much behind them. People who were watching the Ireland-England match in the Shankill Road were saying that the cheer went up when the ball went into the England net just as much as it would in Dublin. I think it's something, once the green shirt is on, people in the 32 will identify with it.
Forget all the differences and so on. Now, you give a history of this book of the World Cup itself, which, of course, is a relatively recent development, yes?
Very recent. The whole idea, there was a lot of conflict over the notion of bringing all the teams together. First of all, it would take away from the Olympic Games, but the fact that the Olympic Games was an all-amateur competition meant that professionals really needed an outlet of their own. And Ireland were invited to the very first World Cup in 1930 without having to qualify. All their expenses paid, brought over to Uruguay for 6 weeks. They couldn't go. They didn't go because they didn't think that many of their players would be able to get off enough time to play in the World Cup finals. Now, we've been, for the last 20 years, we've been crying our hearts out and, in tears when we go out on goal difference in 1982, and we could have been at the very first World Cup finals. We missed another one by 0.02 of a goal, I think, and there wasn't. I mean, it merited 3 paragraphs in the papers. In 1934, there's always another try. But we've been through a lot of World Cup finals, and from about 1966 on, the World Cup became very big news over here, thanks to television. And really, it's very, very important for morale and for the whole future of soccer in Ireland that we qualify. I think a lot was at stake, particularly after coming so close so often.
Yes, but there's been an amazing resurgence in soccer in the country in the last few years. I mean, it was in the doldrums for such a long time.
I think that soccer television brought soccer into a lot of homes where it wouldn't have been seen before, and it broke down the old resilience of the pre-60s spirit of that soccer was a colonial
foreign game, an alien game, all that rubbish.
And it managed to get a lot of people interested. It's a game that takes very, very easily. It's very easy to play in urban settings. And I think that the fact that Ireland wasn't very urbanised, the fact that an awful lot of people were not living in cities, meant that it didn't grow as fast as it did in countries where vast numbers of people were crammed together in small spaces. And you can't play rugby in a street or Gaelic football in a street, or you can play soccer.
You can
let the ball around. A few windows go now and again, but basically it's an urban game.
Indeed it is. Now, you mentioned in the book 3 things that ensured our place. The 3 specific incidents. Just dash through those for me again.
Well, it's very interesting that even though Packy Bonner is the player that is credited with most of Ireland's great saves, particularly in the European Championship finals against England, but the save by his first reserve in Windsor Park was the one that kept Northern Ireland out at a very crucial stage. At the beginning of the very, very first match in the campaign, and George Hamilton's commentary mentioned that at the time, I wonder will we remember that when eventually we get to the World Cup finals.
That was Jerry Payton's save.
Jerry Payton's save, and there was another very crucial one again by Bonner in the match against Hungary. Which in Lansdowne Road, when a lot was at stake, and although we won fairly handily in the end, if Hungary had broken away and scored a goal, it's very we've missed out on these sort of incidents before. Very small incidents, the touch of a ball, or just a player being in the right place at the right time.
Sure.
And they very small incidents. And I think I picked out 3, but there are others around the country who will all come up with their favourite memories. There'll be about.
So Jerry Payton's was 1, the save against Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
Packy Bonner's save in the match against Hungary.
Right, and the third one was probably the match that ensured that morale would soar in the end, and it was the home match against Spain when Michel put the ball into his own goal after 7 minutes. It could have been put in by an Irish player. Yeah. The fact that the ball went in early when our morale was suffering fairly badly as a result of the 2-0 defeat in Spain, and we were beginning to wonder, can things start going wrong again? Yeah. Then a very small touch by a Spanish player into his own goal.
It's called the rub of the green. It's called the rub of the green. And
it never worked before.
It never worked before, or so they would have us believe it never worked before. But that's what it is. The rub of the green. It applies to everything in life, really. Sometimes a few you win, a few you don't. One thing that's absent from the book is interviews, Eoghan, with the World Cup players. Has all the success put them out of reach? Why no interviews?
They're pretty much out of reach.
Yes, they are, aren't they?
They're very difficult to. I mean, a lot of the Irish journalists, the Irish sports journalists, would say that they've met the players who play for the country about once or twice, or even if at all. It's the sort of thing that some of them are not based in the country, some of them are born outside the country. They've really the access to the international team is much more limited than it used to be. The days when you go for a pint with the boys after the game are pretty much over.
Well, they're now marketable commodities, and they're making the most of it because any sportsman has a short and sweet life.
Short and sweet life. There's horror stories of people who earned a lot of money in a very short period of time and ended up, delivering coal and things like that. I think that the amount of money that will be made out of it is generally hyped up to astronomical figures that really don't exist.
But they want to do the best they can.
They need to do the best they can, and people have short memories.
Yeah. Okay, that is Eoghan Corry. The book is called Viva Ireland Goes to Italy, and it's all about going to Italy. That's what it's about, and the history and the whole story behind it. And it's published by Pool Beg. And it'll cost you £5 local. Were you working all night? Do you work through the night?
I work generally a mixture of days and evenings. And I'm in features in the Irish Press, which means I get away a little bit earlier than people who stay into the 3.
Were you working last night?
Worked, yesterday evening.
Yesterday evening?
Yeah.
Not through the night?
Not through the night, no. I'm not on my way home from work.
I see, all right. Well, that was Eoghan Corry. It's on sale as from today. Viva Ireland Goes to Italy, and to settle many an argument in many a pub throughout the country, and the arguments will come thick and fast as we get closer to July. Thanks for coming in, Eoghan, and good luck with the book now.